Strub. And I don't know about you, but when I think of Strub, I think of Strub Pickles, and that's one of the most recognized pickle brands in Canada. And Arnie grew up marketing and building Strub Pickles into this most recognized brand. Through his tenure, he's held varying roles in his family's business, starting out in marketing and growing into the executive vice president, overseeing a $25 million business, delivering over 200 products in Canada and the United States. In 2008, Arnie led the sale of his 80-year-old family business. Today, Arnie works as a sales and marketing consultant with a focus on business governance and consumer packaged goods marketing. He also is an entrepreneur at residence at the DeGroote School of Business and a guest lecturer for their commerce and MBA classes. And Arnie is also a member of the board of directors for the Ontario Education Collaborative Marketplace. This morning, Arnie will share with us some stories and lessons that he gained through the sale of his 80-year-old family business, Strub Pickles. It's my great pleasure to introduce Arnie Strub.
Good morning, everybody. I blew it. I blew it. Even with only the clarity of hindsight, I will always have to live with the gnawing reality that I may have blown it. Well, good morning. I'm Arnie Strub. And no matter what I have achieved since my family sold our business in 2008, I will likely always be best known for pickles, Strub's Pickles. Strub's Pickles is our family business since 1929. That's a long time. It's over 80 years now. And when we sold our business, we were almost at our 80th anniversary. We had already celebrated our 70th and our 75th anniversary together. I had worked with my grandfather, my great uncle, my father, and my brothers. I'm a fourth generation pickle maker. It's in my blood. And I loved it. I really did. I worked in the business for 22 years. Started right when I finished my MBA at McMaster and went right into the business, even though I had wanted to make mistakes with other people's money. First, I didn't have that opportunity because my dad had just taken over from his father and wanted me to help out in the business. So, a brief history of Strub's. From the old country in Kharkov in Ukraine, my great-grandparents arrived in Canada in 1919. Originally, they moved to Guelph, Ontario, because that's where they had a relative. And then they moved to Hamilton. My great-grandfather was a butcher by trade. And my great-grandmother brought along all of her family recipes. Every summer, they would make some dill pickles in small casks, small wooden barrels, and stored in the cold cellar. Well, comes the Depression. My great-grandfather's already making work with two businesses, two jobs, and can't make ends meet. So he approaches his friend, the local greengrocer on York Boulevard in Hamilton, and says, "Would you trade me for groceries some of my pickles?" And he looked at him and said, "Okay, I'll do it." As a favor. Well, to everybody's surprise, the pickles sold. And he said, "Next summer, when you're making your pickles, make extra for me, and I'll sell them at my store." And that's really how the pickle business started. It was a backyard operation right through the war. And as Michael and Sophie's children got older, Dan and Irv is my grandfather, and Dan was my great uncle, his brother, they formed a company, Strub Brothers Limited. Strub Brothers Limited wasn't just pickles, believe it or not. We actually had a soda pop company that operated until 1963 in Hamilton. It eventually was sold to it was a home delivery pop company. So they made pickles during the week, and on the weekend, they delivered soda pop in the neighborhood. That was how my father and his brothers got into the business. But my Uncle Dan didn't have any children, got married later in life. My grandfather, Irv, had 5 children, 4 boys and a girl. My dad was the second oldest. And only my dad expressed an interest in going into the business. The other children became professionals, moved out of Hamilton. And my dad was the only one who went into the business. So it was my dad, and when he came into the business and decided he'd be full-time, Irv, his dad, gave him half of his share. So my Uncle Dan owned 50% of the business, Irv owned 25%, and Leo owned 25%. So now, Leo and Isabel, my mom, have 3 boys. Arnie, I'm the oldest, Marty, and Andy. And as we grew up, every summer we would work in the pickle factory, come home smelling like garlic. I remember being a newlywed, and I had my coveralls home. My wife wouldn't let me come in the house unless I took the coveralls off first, left them outside before coming into the house. I liked the smell. I guess I got used to it. What can I say? So the 3 of us eventually came into the business and worked with our dad and, on a full-time basis. And we worked there, we're talking since 1986, really until 2008. So during that time, each one of us brothers got married. Each of us had 3 children. And we were at the stage where we were wondering what's going to happen next. There's going to be 9 cousins. Who's going to come into the business? Who do we allow to come into the business? Or do we set up criteria? Is anyone allowed to come in just because they're a Strub family member? So we had, at the point where we were contemplating selling, we had 9 cousins, all under the age of 18. Perhaps not an uncommon dilemma amongst family businesses. But as you can see, we'd made it to a 4th generation, and according to the cafe statistics, the likelihood of reaching a 4th generation is under 3%. So we felt we had done pretty good, but we realized the likelihood of making it to a 5th generation was probably not so great, and that we had better look at some options for ourselves going forward. So one of the things I did for myself, I joined Cafe because I wanted to be in a PAG. And that was one of the most, well, at the time, a very selfish thing for me to do. I felt for years I'd been doing everything for my family, my business. I really hadn't done anything for myself, and I needed to have some personal and business support. And it was a good thing. It was a very good thing. And after being in 2 PAGs, and after leaving Cafe for a time, I'm now back in Cafe, and I'm in my 3rd PAG. And it's wonderful to be back in that fold, being supporting and supportive. It's just wonderful, and I'm sure most of you in the audience, I'm preaching to the choir. I don't need to get into that, but a PAG is wonderful. But what I did learn from a PAG are some very important things that really helped me as we went through our family enterprise and going through the decision of what to do next. So my years of participation had taught me many lessons about family businesses, mainly what to achieve and what to avoid. So my priorities were to achieve, and I wanted to achieve family harmony. It was very important. The 3 brothers were at the office all day. We all lived close to each other. We had spent all of our time together at holidays. You couldn't escape it. So family harmony was a really important thing to achieve on an ongoing basis. Wanted to ensure, as a 4th generation pickle maker, that there's going to be a legacy after we either divested or sent it on to the next generation. And of course, I wanted to make sure that I also had some personal growth. I didn't want to feel stunted. I wanted to keep learning more and more. And all of these things, PAG was able to help me with and support me with those things. Of course, I also learned things I wanted to avoid. You want to avoid family disharmony, which is, everything's kind of like the opposite of what you want to achieve. You want to avoid collapse of the company, and you want to avoid personal disgrace. So with all of those, I also learned that, and most of you already know this, I also learned from my PAG that the path is paved with gold. It would always be possible to achieve my goals as long as the money flows. It's a lot easier, at least. And for 20 some odd years, the money was flowing. We were able to grow and prosper. We were able to contemplate different opportunities and different options. And we really never thought about what we should do if the money stopped flowing and if there was going to be trouble. And this is a common trait. Even in your PAG, everyone in your PAG is doing well, or they're contemplating a sale. Things are going pretty good. It's not the norm to have someone who's on a downslope involved in a PAG because either they've pulled themselves out because they're too worried about what's going on, or it's not a productive, constructive process if a company or a person is on a downslope, which is what I've learned, and partly why I still feel like I blew it. So what I did learn from my PAG is that, and which we did put in place, have a succession plan for managing the business. Yeah, check, we did that. Have a succession plan for ownership of the company. Yeah, we had a shareholders agreement. We put that in place. Surround yourself with good counsel. Did that too. It's easier to sell your business when times are good. I understood that. I understood it inherently. We went through CIMs a couple of times while the business was what we felt was doing good. So we had an idea, some options, what our valuations were, if there were interested people in our business. And we always had the option of saying no if somebody made us an offer that was too low. So it was good while the money was flowing and we wanting to avoid a fire sale. The problem is you are never prepared for when the money stops, because you're always focused on what to do next. Like anyone here, if I said to you, what would you do with $1 million for your business right now? Oh, easy. Well, I'll invest in inventory. I'll invest in sales and marketing. I'm going to open a new office. I'm going to hire some new people. Okay, what about the other way? What if I said to you, tomorrow you're going to have $500,000 less? Do you know what you're going to do right away? Most people don't. Most family businesses don't. And this is what I didn't know at the time. And of course, it's only through hindsight that I know now what I should have felt I should have known then. So that's the main part that I really want to share with you today. So I blew it because I did not have a contraction plan, and I didn't have an exit plan that I constantly updated. An exit plan for different types of situations, for either when the company's going well or the company's not going well. Because at any point in time when you exit, you want to be able to maximize the value of your assets, not just for yourself, but for your family. And if you don't have a plan, it ends up being like a fire sale. And to me, when we sold our business, unfortunately, it seemed more like a fire sale, and that's why I feel like I blew it. So what have I learned? I learned that family businesses need to add a new component. They have to incorporate a venture capitalist mentality a little bit to their planning. Because think of it as an outside investor. If you invite an outside investor into your company, they always have an exit plan. They know exactly what they want to achieve, whether it goes up or it goes down. Well, if family directors and family business owners started thinking like venture capitalists, always having a contraction plan and always having an exit plan, no matter what the situation, and constantly update it, they will always be able to maximize the value of their assets no matter at what point in time they are. So what have I learned from this whole thing? I learned that I want to try to pass on to other family businesses to be able to control your destiny, to prepare for both good times and for bad times. Always have an update, an exit plan, and a contraction plan. And set yourself up to achieve in any situation or for difficult circumstances. So I want to thank you, and just give you a little epilogue to this whole thing. So what has happened since 2008? So I'm going to put this down. So 4 years later, it's almost exactly 4 years later, by the way, it looks like the circle has come full for me. The people we sold it to, the company to in 2008, put the company into bankruptcy in May of this past year. They really blew it. Like, thank God I didn't blow it like that. I was at least able to sell the business, save jobs, got our family out intact. We didn't get much money, if anything, but we got ourselves out intact. The next month in June, what had always been our major competitor, Mrs. White's Pickles from Montreal, bought the brand out of bankruptcy. And subsequently, hired my brother Marty to run the pickle factory, and then in August hired me to be their sales consultant to help revive and prosper the sales of the Strub's brand. So that's where I am today, at the beginning of a new career in pickles, of all things. And whether that's going to also include other opportunities, I'm sure it will, because I am determined to continue my career as an outside director for helping companies. I now have my chartered director's degree from the Director's College, and if you ever contemplated, I would highly recommend getting your chartered director's degree from the Director's College. And I really enjoy helping other people, other family businesses transition, because I've gone through the experience. I want them to be able to prosper in good times and in bad times. So thank you for allowing me to tell you my story and having me here today.
The one comment you made, and I'd be very curious if you could expand on it briefly, is the contraction plan. I really thought that was an interesting idea, because I've grown up with the philosophy in my family business that nothing relieves pressure like sales. Every time you're in a trough, all the self-deprecating thoughts skyrocket. So this contraction plan intrigued me a little.
Well, it's only from learning from experience. So there was a point in 2007 for me where things were going according to plan. All of a sudden, it was November, I remember it very vividly, November and December 2007, two of historically of our best months in sales. The sales were 25% lower than planned. For no reason at all. There was nothing wrong with our customers, nothing wrong with anything. It just stopped. And it put us into a difficult situation, because at that point in time, we were highly leveraged on our AR receivables. And without that leveraging, we didn't have money to pay for our crops, which had just come in. It put us in a very, very difficult situation. So understanding that if I had planned for that, I may have been able to put in place either temporary or permanent overhead reductions, people that we don't need for a while I may have wanted to lay off or fire, but we really didn't have a plan, and we were always reacting. We're thinking, oh, well, tomorrow's going to turn around, tomorrow's going to turn around. The thing is, you never, when sales drop, there's always a concern, is it a blip, or is it a trend? And I wasn't prepared in case it was a trend, and that's the difficult. If I had a plan in place in case it was a trend, I could turn the page and say, okay, we have to do this, 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 this now, instead of having to think about it, because it's so emotionally difficult when you're in a difficult monetary situation to be able to put together a plan which is beneficial for the company. And I'm of belief now that planning for good times is just as important as planning for not so good times, so that you aren't handcuffed by the emotional response that you're undoubtedly going to have.
It's a great tip, because I often see everyone plans for growth and success, but that backwards philosophy and how to react in a crisis, it's very hard when the emotions are running so high. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Any other questions before we wrap up? Great, thanks, Arnie.
Thank you.